In the autonomous city of Buenos Aires, residential building administration operates under a chronic strain. The historical default rate on monthly expenses, the MORA, consistently hovers between 15 and 25% across the city's housing stock. The traditional administrative response to this shortfall is reactive. Administrators often wait for delayed funds to arrive before addressing maintenance, meaning they only repair infrastructure once it has already failed. This chart illustrates the financial cost of that delay. When preventative maintenance is deferred, emergency operating expenses, or OPEX, spike. Fixing a burst pipe at 2 a.m. costs exponentially more than a scheduled routine inspection. As common areas deteriorate to offset these emergency costs, capital expenditures, CapEx, are eroded. The market value of every individual unit in the building drops alongside the failing shared infrastructure. By tolerating a permanent state of arrears, the traditional system forces punctual owners to subsidize the cash flow of defaulters. This dynamic actively depletes the collective wealth of the building's most reliable members. A recently circulated press release proposes a complete reframing of this role. It argues that a professional administrator functions as a patrimonial engineer, responsible for the building's total asset value, rather than a simple liquidator of invoices. Under this model, a residential building is a micro-financial system. It faces the same structural hurdles as a larger economy, maintaining liquidity to cover immediate costs and ensuring solvency through the recovery of long-term credits. The document introduces the TITA method, represented by the Greek letter theta. This framework applies the economic theory of debt credibility, developed by Nobuhiro Kiyotaki and John Moore, to the specific challenges of property management. Implementing this framework requires no legislative changes. Every tool it utilizes is already present in Argentina's Civil and Commercial Code and CABA's Law 941. Modernizing the administration into an active financial operation allows a building to stabilize its infrastructure immediately, utilizing the legal powers already granted to the community. In economic theory, the parameter theta represents the mathematical degree of credibility that a payment will be honored. In a condo network, two distinct types of theta determine the building's financial health. Theta 1 is the intrinsic credibility of the owner. When theta 1 is near 100%, the owner pays because they value the collective good and their own reputation within the community. Theta 1 is vulnerable to contagion. When reliable payers observe neighbors defaulting without consequence, their own willingness to pay erodes. They begin to calculate that contributing their full share is futile if the building continues to deteriorate anyway. To halt this decline, the system requires theta 2. This is the extrinsic credibility generated by institutional enforcement, executive certificates of debt, legal filings, and notary retentions. Activating theta 2 changes the defaulter's financial calculus. It ensures that the accumulated cost of non-payment, including interest and legal fees, becomes higher than the cost of the original monthly fee. Exercising theta 2 is the consistent application of the legal rules the community agreed to when purchasing their property. It ensures that the burden of the building's upkeep is shared as the law intended. Without the structural presence of theta 2, an internal willingness to pay eventually collapses. Theta 1 alone cannot prevent a spiral into collective default. Just as a central bank injects liquidity into a stalled economy, an active administrator uses theta 2 to inject necessary cash into the building's budget.
This process converts private promises of payment, which currently have low credibility, into real liquid assets that the building can use to fund its operations. This conversion is anchored by Article 2049 of the Civil and Commercial Code. It establishes a propter rem guarantee, meaning the debt is tied directly to the property itself. Under propter rem, the debt follows the bricks. If an owner attempts to sell a unit with arrears, the notary is legally required to retain the full debt balance from the proceeds of the sale. This mechanism gives condo debt an effective theta of nearly 1 or 100% certainty of collection. It provides more security than a standard mortgage, where legal execution can be slow and uncertain. Uncollected fees are not lost funds. They are secure, appreciating credits, backed by the real estate itself, the most solid asset in the economic system. We can apply this logic through a specific mathematical formula at the building's next assembly. Here, X represents the actual expenses required to run the building, and D represents the historical default rate.
To ensure the building has the cash it needs, the Assembly approves a budget equal to X divided by 1 minus D. If the building requires 1 million pesos to operate and faces a 20% default rate, the budget is set at 1.25 million pesos. This calculation maintains fairness. Every owner is billed their exact legal percentage of the new total based on their unit size, as established by the building's bylaws. Transparency is maintained through a dual-column accounting method. The ledger tracks the building's financial state through 3 specific categories. Devengado, or accrued, tracks the total debt owed by each unit under the approved budget. This represents the building's actual patrimony and legal credits. Percibido, or collected, shows the actual cash that arrived in the administrator's account. This represents the building's immediate liquidity for paying suppliers. This adjustment ensures the building has the cash required for maintenance today, while legally identifying the debt of defaulters as a recoverable asset for the future. Consistent debt recovery directly improves the building's physical state. Routine maintenance performed with available cash is significantly cheaper than emergency repairs necessitated by long-term neglect. Ownership of a unit includes a legal percentage of the entire building, the elevators, the facade, and the lobby. These shared assets are an integral part of an owner's personal net worth. Protecting these common areas increases capex. A building in excellent condition sees its individual units sell and rent at significantly higher prices. Refusing to execute debt actively destroys the net worth of every punctual payer in the building. It is a choice to let the collective asset lose its market value. To implement this, the Propuesta para la Asamblea document outlines 3 specific voting points for any building community. The first mandate approves the X over 1 minus D budget formula, making the historical default rate a metric that is adjusted at each assembly. The second mandate requires the administrator to immediately adopt the transparent accrued versus collected accounting ledger. The final mandate gives the administrator explicit backing of the assembly to exercise full Theta 2 powers, including the immediate filing of lawsuits and the use of notary retentions. Applying the TITA method ensures a building functions as an appreciating asset. It relies on rigorous institutional engineering to secure the community's wealth, moving beyond a simple reliance on neighborly goodwill.